Doug and John, I guess I'll ask you guys, have you been seeing, are there any questions? We don't have a lot of time. We're already over time. However, we do want to make sure we answer any kind of relevant questions.
Yeah, I haven't seen any in the chat or on the Q&A, but I'll just kind of throw out first, of course, thank you to Di and to Lil and Kelly. It was really enlightening, I think, on all those fronts. And so I guess a couple, one comment for Kelly, I think it was really interesting because, I work at AT&T and I manage a fairly large portfolio of data centers of different types. And I think as you shared about your efforts during, in this whole process of navigating COVID-19, it was encouraging to hear that a lot of these things that are now becoming best practices and some of the innovation, about how do we screen and how do we do contact tracing and all of these other things that have become critical to operating a large enterprise. So that was appreciated you sharing what you're doing, and and it's again, I think it's good for all of us because we're all interacting and working, and your business and my business as essential parts of the economy and IT infrastructure. There's no avoiding people being in the field and interacting.
Right.
And then Di, one of the things that as I was thinking about as you were sharing what's happening, and it was interesting to see some of the trends that you shared in the types of jobs that you're recruiting for now. It made me think about the two sides of the fence. There's the people now that are unemployed that are looking, actively looking for work, assuming that that's their objective, and then you have people that are employed. And, maybe we're previously thinking about exploring other options, but now saying, okay, maybe, we see how this thing plays out. What have you seen, what observations have you seen in the sentiment, I guess, of people, that might have been more active in the job market, but are now thinking, okay.
The more fearful. So, a lot of times, especially with direct hire positions, we go try to recruit people out of other companies. And that's something I didn't bring up during the presentation is what I expected to see was lots of contract positions over the last few months, just kind of filling those gaps. And maybe I touched on it earlier, but all I've been seeing up until maybe this month was direct hire positions. So the client still had the belief in their company, that it was going to do well, and they're still going forward and filling those positions. But we had a challenge trying to pull people from other companies. Everything's so uncertain right now, and so that's why I was kind of hitting on what are your incentives, so how can you prove, nothing's ever a guarantee, but how can you prove that your company is going to be secure, at least for the next year or next couple of years? A lot of it has to do with industry. Look at biotech is going to be going crazy. One of my companies that I was talking about where put a director of IT in there. I've got another leader position I'm about to fill in there. I've presented Kim to a BA position over there, and those types of companies are going to do really well. Home furnishings doing great right now. Think about those. Listening to the CIO from Living Spaces the other day on one of the calls, and home improvement. We all should have bought stock in Home Depot, one of the do-it-yourself centers, right? Because, everybody's at home. They want to fix up their house, and I'm noticing a lot of yards looking a lot nicer than
I'm going to be heading there here after this call, in fact.
But yes, so a lot of it's going to have to do, so if we have employers listening to this call, you're really going to have to work hard to make sure you're enticing enough and you're able to prove, again, the COVID scare, right? What are the regulations going to be? How safe is your environment? What are you going to offer for maybe training? How are you going to compete with other companies or their current employer? Because if they right now they have everything they want, they haven't been furloughed or laid off, and they're working from home, and their employer is accommodating them, and everything's working smoothly, you know, why should they leave? It's a little too uncertain out there for new companies. So these recruiters have a much more difficult job.
It's a very interesting environment, and I'm still kind of watching the chat, and I do want to kind of pass the torch to John, because John, you know, as we talked earlier, you know, obviously spent a long time in this industry and has you know, found himself in a different opportunity right now, and so I thought, you know, John, maybe you'd like to ask a few questions or, you know, share some insights.
You know what, I'll just make a quick comment, because I did read through Di's page of tips and whatnot, but anybody who's out there seeking for a new job, I think one of the most important things is your resume. I iterated through mine a lot, and I finally got somebody who gave me some really good feedback, and it really helped me break through. So I'll kind of leave it at that, is spend some time getting a quality resume that shows off your experience and just doesn't talk about, you know, what you're capable of. Show what value you provided your old company and tell your story in your resume.
Okay, and I'm going to take that one further, and I thought if we had a little bit more time, I'd go a little bit into that. You have to usually revamp your resume and put some key points in there for the job that you're applying to, because they get hundreds of applicants, and we have to sift through those. And we're going through an aggregator of, you know, pulling out specific skill words and things like that. If we get 100 and something applicants just for one job in one day, how do we filter through those, and how do we pull those people out and say, okay, these are the top ones that we're going to start screening? So it's very important that the top of the resume, you know, screams what you're looking for, and those details. And a lot of times you can use the details that I used for my screening for applicants. You know, you want to make sure if you're in a management level, you know, size of staff, money you saved a company, your budgetary responsibility, you know, talk about years in the industry and years of top skill sets. Summarize it, make it very quick for the client or the recipient, you know, to see that. John, you got very lucky with yours. You know, I don't know how you got into the company that you're interviewing with, but you know, you said that you had to revamp your resume, and you have to revamp it usually every time. And another quick tip is you usually can't rewrite your resume all the time. So what you do is you put hidden and what I call ghosted, whited out acronyms or variations of the same skill set word that's on a job description. Goes into the system to pulls out the resume. Maybe they don't see why, because it, you know, doesn't get highlighted, that specific skill set, but it's tricked them into pulling up your resume and maybe doing a brief read through. So there's a lot of little tips.
That is. So I got one. I'm going to ask one last. We're over time here, but I'm going to ask one last question for each of our panelists or presenters here, and I'll ask them both now, and then you guys can choose who wants to go first. First question would be on the recruiting and the staffing side, but if you've had someone who's been in a particular industry vertical for a certain period of time, right? And we talked about this yesterday, Di, is that we have a very well diversified industry segment here in Southern California, right? It's not like in Houston, very energy centric, right? We've got the entertainment industry, we've got financial services, we've got fashion industry, we've got everything. But if you've had IT talent or data center talent in a specific industry vertical for so many years, and they're nervous to go back out in the marketplace today. And maybe, you know, Kim, this is a good, you know, segment for you, right? Being with you know, Princess for so long, right? Is it the industry sector knowledge, right, or is it the IT application knowledge? What do you sell? And then I'll ask the question for Cyxtera at the same time, which is right now with the repatriation. And by the way, we've always tried to say my biggest pet peeve is when people say we're moving to the cloud. Right. Well, there's no cloud, right? It's really multi-cloud. And cloud gets really expensive really quick, right? So it's the number one reason why people are coming back from putting everything, right, in cloud. So the question for Cyxtera is, right, was with your ability to utilize your infrastructure as a service model at Cyxtera, right, I would suspect that's saving clients significant costs on not only cloud costs, public cloud costs, but also the bandwidth costs by going to that hybrid co-location model where you're just cross-connecting to cloud solutions, right? So I'll let whoever wants to take that first, right, relative to the recruiting piece and then the Cyxtera piece.
Kim, go ahead.
Yeah, that's an interesting question, especially because I was trying to change industries along with it. So hospitality is not paying off so much anymore. But I definitely emphasize the skills, and truly I just point back to that. I agree with Di. The template helps with that quick intro because it does focus on the skill sets. That was an easy way to tailor it to a job posting. And I'm a stickler for cover letters too, because if someone's going to read one, that's a great way just to throw your pitch out there as well. I'd say if you have a chance to do it, take the time to do it, because a lot of recruiters do read them and hiring managers read them too.
And I'll chime in just a little bit. It's a lot of clients do look for the industry experience, but sometimes you can come across somebody fits everything else and they understand enough about maybe the industry. They haven't worked in it, but they've done their due diligence because they want to get into it. And it depends on the client, whether or not they give them a chance. And it applies to all levels as well. You really have to, a lot of times it helps to have a recruiter like myself introduce you, whether it's for a fee or not, but just an introduction. But then if you want to get into a different industry or, and I'm not just talking about, entertainment or, IT, whatever it is, even a different technology, you just got to show that you've done your due diligence on learning it or understanding what is involved going forward if you get hired.
Kelly, on the Cyxtera piece?
That'd be Lael.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's a very interesting point, around cloud connectivity costs, and costs are probably the number one reason people are bringing apps back, and control and security being next. But when you put information and workloads in a public cloud, normally you have to pay data egress fees. So you run your workload up there and it's great, but you have to get it back, right? And that's where they get you. That's where the invoices really start to increase. So there's what we call value engineering, and it's all about proximity, latency to the workload. So overall, the farther away, the higher the latency, and the higher the invoice, higher the cost to connect to it. So the idea is to be as close to your workload as you possibly can, reduce connectivity costs, not have to pay for data egress. It's already your data. Why pay for it just to get it back? And then also just the resiliency, having a reliable connection to get to it. So no one wants to rely on the public internet alone to access a workload, whether it be in a data center or the public cloud. So you have the most options in terms of how to connect somewhere from a data center, whether it be public internet or Ethernet virtual private lines or dark fiber between locations even. So lots of different options there. And then you reduce the connectivity costs, reduce the data egress charges, while at the same time increasing the accessibility of that data and workload, and giving yourself a lot of different platforms to choose from too. So many reasons to have an environment in a co-location facility, as opposed to the public cloud. And there are reasons for the public cloud, which we won't get into, but good question. Is
the compute as a service model available at each of your 3 data centers here in Southern California?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Yes, it is. Thank you.
Great. Well, I think that we're well over our time, so I wanted to thank our panelists for participating today. It's been fantastic. And Di,
Thank you.
IT recruiting czar of Southern California, we've been wanting to have you on forever, so we're thankful.
Thank you.
Participated. So, and then also Cyxtera, you guys have been longtime supporters of our chapter. Again, we're a not-for-profit organization focused on education, so bravo to you for all the assistance that you've provided us over the years. So,
thank you.
if no further questions, we'll adjourn, and we'll check with everybody on the look forward to seeing information for our next event for the holiday social.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, folks.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Stay safe. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.
Thanks, Kim.